way back in the 1970s, a proposition was passed called Proposition 13, and that kind of pulled all the funding away from schools. And this was the first time that funding was taken away from schools. Therefore, the arts programs were the first things to be cut. So my entire lifetime, the arts were always under the chopping block as a student and as a teacher and as a parent. So Prop 28 is finally addressing that deficit of funding for the arts by ensuring there's funding to hire teachers. 80% of the funds has to go to hiring teachers.
Stop. Welcome back to Artful Pods. In this episode, we take a moment to honor and celebrate the tireless work and efforts of the many arts advocates in California, inviting to the table Jeannine Flores, board chair of Create California, a coalition of dedicated and innovative leaders who are fighting for equitable and accessible arts education for all public school students. Join us as we unpack the significance of Prop 28, exploring its profound implications on fostering creativity, nurturing innovation, and sculpting a brighter future for education. Let's dive deep into how this affirmative stance is reshaping our educational landscapes, paving the way for a narrative where yes and isn't just a theatrical guide. It's a mantra for cultivating imagination and innovation in our schools. Let's join the conversation.
And how Create was behind a whole public will campaign that changed the landscape in California. Because I've been with you on those arts advocacy policy initiatives for many a year. And this is a huge win for arts education in California.
Thank you, Robin. Yeah, Create California was founded through our state superintendent wanting to bring some different organizations together to have a coalition around arts education. So Create California was founded, and the contributing partners with that were the California Department of Education, the California PTA, which is the Parent Teacher Association, the California County Superintendents, and we also had the California Alliance for Arts Education and the California Arts Council. We came together, and it was a really savvy group of board members that wanted to work to shift arts education. So I believe that's an accurate historical representation. And from that work and those collaborations, we developed, the first thing I believe we developed was was a student equity declaration. I know we're going to talk about that later. We also had that public will campaign. I think that came out about 2018. And I remember we launched that in San Jose at a meeting that Create California hosted. And that was the beginning of our public will campaign. And because we saw when we were talking to the field, there was a lot of misinformation about arts education and the value of arts education. It isn't just finger painting and gluing macaroni to boxes and just singing little songs. It was transformative for our students' lives, and they had an opportunity to work in the creative sector. So we launched a public will campaign.
And that's when some of the brilliance of the work Create's led, including the students' rights for arts education, and Santa Ana Unified in 2018, when a public will campaign started. We became an equity and arts learning district, and we worked with students, and Create California joined us in that process. We worked with students to talk about that and what does it mean to have rights to arts education, and having them look at the data and examining what their needs are, what they want for our school district. And at the same time, the city of Santa Ana also became an equity and arts learning champion. So a sister initiative, both of those at the time. And that was a Create California initiative. And so that also led to the Student Voices campaign that you all do, which we are trying to tie our students to. So we've created a youth arts leadership group. It's our ASB of the arts, if you will, because I've watched all the leadership at the state and seen all the people in those arts ed policy council meetings and people that are making, talking to legislators and people that are making decisions that have direct impact on kids. Why can't we foster our kids to be in those spaces to advocate and champion themselves? So that led up to, how does all this lead up to us getting Prop 28 and that implication?
We are in a really good place. I don't think Prop 28 is the silver lining. We still got a lot of work to do to make sure it's equitable. And I love Santa Ana. I lived there for most of my life as an adult. And the fact that you guys embrace the equity declaration for our students, that the city also did as well, it shows a very powerful meaning around arts education. And when you look at the data, you can see the inequities, even in your district of Santa Ana, of the haves and the have-nots, depending on the zip code, right? That's not okay. We should have the same opportunities at every high school in the city, period. And we should have the same opportunities at every middle school, as well as access to it in every elementary school as well. Sometimes there's just glaring holes, and when you look at it based on race or based on economic status or free and reduced lunch programs, equities are glaring, and that's huge. And I think our board members really strive to make sure all students have a wonderful education in the city of Santa Ana, and we want to make sure that keeps going. So having these tools like the Arts Ed Data Project, which was funded by Create California, and now there's an FTE tracker. I don't know if you're aware of that. There's a full-time educator data report you can pull, because one of the baselines for Prop 28 funding, the Arts and Music in Our Schools Funding and Accountability Act, is full-time educators, right? So if I'm just going to throw out a number, I don't even know it's right. Maybe there's 50 teachers teaching visual and performing arts in a district, that would be the baseline. And then anything over 50 would show growth, right? And that 80% of their funding would be to hire the new teachers. So,
where do we find that? That's amazing.
Yeah. So createcalifornia.org is our main page. And then if you go under the data project, it's right there at the top of the page. There's even some videos on how to navigate the rest of the resources there.
Beautiful. And to that end, does it Create have more toolkits that they offer?
Yes, and we have.
Yes, and good job.
I'm learning.
That's why we love you and appreciate.
Yes, we have social media toolkit, which is phenomenal. We are developing right now a toolkit to support Prop 28, and that will include tools for districts to use to identify their baseline and look at their FTEs, their full-time educators, look at what inventory and assets they already have in the district, and as well as what they might need, right? There will also be some tools for the reporting, the data reporting, right? It's an accountability act as well as a funding act, right? So how are we going to share this information? The CDE will also be, looking at all of these things and seeing what that needs to look like. But there's going to be some tools there to help with the funding, to help with the program development, to just put a marker of where things are. So we're really excited about that. That should be out here by the end of the year.
Well, that's so exciting because we are working with our secondary sites in particular to have them create their ASAP plans. So maybe you might want to jump in and describe that and what they're doing, because this is really going to help them use this because we're trying to get everybody at a baseline. We want to get ahead on the reporting and accountability piece and be ready to help our sites because it's going to be a lot to manage.
Well, I first want to give a shout out to Jeannine for all of the advocacy and the push for that, because it is tiring and it's overwhelming. I've heard a lot of times many of our educators say, but why do we have to advocate for something we know is good all the time? And it's kind of the irony that most people often say, like, yeah, arts are awesome. We're just going to cut it this year.
Yeah, we don't put our money where our mouth is, which is what we're doing finally, Kel.
Fine, yeah, which it's just fascinating. But I also love that kind of at the center point of this advocacy is the student voice. And with the ASAP plans, although it's teacher developed, the teachers are looking at data similar to that of a SIPSA, student achievement plan for student is a
single plan for
student achievement. Thank you. Similar to a SIPSA, single plan for student achievement, the ASAP plan, or the Arts Strategic Academic Achievement Plan, is looking at the data of how the arts impact the site as a whole. So anywhere from attendance to grades, GPA, to social emotional learning and wellness, to scores. But the one thing that we had asked our educators to go back to their sites and do is to actually interview their students as to what do you want your arts pathways to look and feel like? Because now, based on what you guys feel you need and want in this classroom, we now need to re-examine what's current and see where does this 80% go to when it comes to hiring somebody. How do we look at the interview process for an arts educator? What are we looking for when they come into this classroom? Are they looking for innovation, creativity? Are students wanting more of a collaborator versus a person who's going to tell them how to do the arts? So as we work with our teachers in the ASAP plan to not only look at their data, we're also asking them to ask the end user, which is our students, of what does the arts education for the future look like for you and for others and for our, at the very least, state, since we are the economic hub of the arts in the state of California. So our
is creative economy capital.
Yeah, I could make lots of noise over here and applaud. I want to applaud you guys because I want to make so much noise for two reasons. One, you're asking the students what they want. They are our user. They are our audience as educators, right? So their voice is very important. And then the second thing is you're tracking students through their career in Santa Ana Unified, this is huge. Hasn't been done before. I'm really excited to see how that goes and how you're doing it. And I know other people would be really excited to hear how that might work, because that might be some really good data to share statewide as well as nationally. And it informs you, right? We want to make data-informed decisions. So yay, I just want to say yay, good job.
Thank you. You're right. We do want to make data-informed decisions because at the end of the day, we're talking sustainability. While people perceive that there's this huge influx of funding, and you said this earlier, so I'd like you to elaborate on it, Jeannine. Why is it not the only solution? And why could that perception be misleading if we're not careful? Because right now it's like, oh, all this money, and it feels like, let's go for a money grab and just grab things. But we're trying to say, and this legislation says people, because we know the equity issue is the teachers. So how do we think about strategically the use of this funding for sustaining arts education?
So many things around funding. Definitely a yes and here. Proposition 28 passed. The previous year, we were awarded the Arts and Music Instructional Materials Block grants that sunsets in 2026. That was one-time funding. And some districts like Santa Ana Unified are using it strictly for the arts and to support buying materials and curriculum, so well done. And other districts are using it for other means, depending on what their needs are. But that was one-time funding. It goes away. The great thing about the arts and music in our schools funding is that it is ongoing in perpetuity until it gets voted off. And you know how hard that is to rescind a bill with the voters, especially around education and especially around the arts. So this is money that's ongoing. So one of the things that we're dealing with is that this is not going away. You do not need to be fearful that the money's going away, because there's still a lot of scarcity around the funding that it's going to just be snatched away from people.
It is important to note that on November 8th, 2022, California voters approved Proposition 28, the Arts and Music in Schools Funding Guarantee and Accountability Act, with 75.8% of the vote. It will require the state to provide the equivalent of 1% of California's state funding for public schools from pre-K through 12th grade for the arts, with 80% going towards staff hiring, 19% going towards materials, and 1% going towards administrative costs. Prop 28 has sparked more questions about equity in schools, what high-quality education looks like for all students, and who is making the decisions for students to engage in their learning. As we unpack the layers of Proposition 28 and its ambitious goals for arts education, it begs the question, how can equitable access to the arts transform the landscape of learning for every child? Let's listen in.
We don't need to just do hand painting. We need to do other forms. Is it culturally relevant to the students that you serve? Are the teachers that are teaching representative of the students in their classroom?
Mm-hmm.
Are we just perpetuating the programs that have already been established, or are we bringing in new things? This is California. This is the creative capital of the world, and our pathways in arts, media, and entertainment can start in kindergarten. Film productions, sound production, audio design, graphic design, game design, coding. All of these things are in the arts, and we have standards for them. And I know the students are making videos on their phones, perhaps, or their Chromebooks. And there are standards on how to do that. Pre-production, post-production, and media arts is huge. So what if there was a pathway that could connect our students to the creative career industry right here in California, if that was something they wanted to pursue? And regardless if they want to do the arts or not, students need to have a flexibility of thinking. They need to communicate. They need to collaborate. And they need to be able to think outside the box and come up with multiple solutions to problems, because we have no idea what kind of jobs they're going to be having in the future.
Mm-hmm. I kind of want to jump to, because everything that you just said, in terms of the skill sets that you're talking about with students, what students are looking for, even what the state is looking for, or the fact that we don't know what the job market is going to look like next year, not even like 5 years. I go back to the funding isn't going to solve for that. It's not going to help us create these magical courses or pathways or pipelines that solve for what we don't know in the future. And I want to kind of go into how you would leverage all resources and not focus on Prop 28 or even these one-time block grants that will go away, the one-time block grants. The Prop 28 isn't necessarily going to teach critical thinking or creativity or innovation, but the teacher, as Robin always points out, is the equity piece. So this 80% from Prop 28 that's going towards staffing, how are we leveraging those kinds of resources with and without funding?
We have multiple funding sources in education. I don't want to go into all of them, but we have a local control accountability plan that the district adopts every year and that the community can have input on. The arts should be somewhere in the narrative as well as the line items for that. One thing that we can use different funding for is the federal funds. We can use federal funds for the professional development of the teachers that we are getting. It doesn't have to all come out of Prop 28. We have professional development dollars. We have federal dollars to support English learners. And the arts are such a wonderful vehicle to get our students to pass their English language speaking test. I forget what it's called. What's that called?
I did find that it's LPAC testing.
Thank you. LPAC testing.
Yes.
To get redesignated, right?
Yes, to get redesignated.
There are multiple funding sources that we just need to think creatively like that. We need to give our district's leaders an opportunity to be creative in that way. We're in such a response in critical mode all the time. It's really hard to slow down and step back, right? It's like, oh gosh, this is due next month. I need to get finishing up on this, and we're just going to cut and paste from last year. We're all with great intentions, but sometimes it's a problem for everybody, right? And at every role, we just get too busy. And we need to focus on that student and that outcome there, right? And if the teacher is the leverage for the equity piece, what does the teacher need to succeed in that classroom? Right? What is going to attract teachers to your district and have them stay for the long term, right? So if you're creating job descriptions and I have a choice between being itinerant at 15 schools and itinerant at 3, I'd probably go with the 3. I probably would have my own space and a desk and a place to call home and a community to latch onto. So we need to think about that aspect of the teachers as well.
That's a really good point. And you led me to ask, because in SAUSD Arts, our focus is on the ART approach, access, responsiveness, and transformational approaches, transformative work. So in the spirit of what Sophia was talking about earlier, funding doesn't create beautiful experiences that our students have in the classroom. It can hire the people who can make that happen. And who do we need to be as educators now for students in this really rapidly changing by the minute landscape, especially as we look at AI and the impact on the arts? We knew that there would be jobs we're training kids for right now that we didn't know existed, and it seems to have accelerated at exponential rates. So who do we need to be thinking about how we have this opportunity in California to shift the narrative and transform education? Because we do have a nod that says, yes, hire people and make this happen. So what help us think about that?
We need facilitators of education in our classroom. We do not need a sage on the stage imparting their wisdom and if they take it, then all is well. No, we need people that are going to be creating experiences and systems, giving the students the skill set. Yes, we need to learn technique. We need to learn those skills. But then I'm going to take those skills and I'm going to create the art I want. I'm going to create the music and dance that I want with the steps and the techniques that I've learned in my training. So we need teachers that are facilitators, and we need teachers that are brave, because we also need teachers that are going to think outside of the box, that they're going to be okay with students making noise. They're going to be okay with the administrator coming in and thinking there's chaos happening, but there's actually learning and creation happening. And we need teachers to teach to the new standards of creating, responding, performing, and connecting. Creating is huge. And as a performing artist myself, that one's a little scary for many of the teachers that my peers in age group. We were so dictating what we play. The band director picked out the repertoire. The students didn't, but one of the standards says that the students will learn how to select a repertoire for a concert.
Oh, oh, I love that. And also, to your point, the standards also have in them things like willingness to take risks, not even just taking risks, but how do you assess willingness to take risks? And how do you effectively coach people to do that if you aren't willing to do that yourself? It's certainly easy to say, hey, you do that over there. I've done this. And how do we be reflective enough to step back and take the risks and model for our kids? This is what it looks and feels like. So we know what we're asking kids to do.
We also need to have a school environment where the teachers can be brave and be facilitators and not be the showman. There's a place for adding community, but do we have to perform at every breakfast or every pep rally and CIF game? Or there's a lot of asks, right? And yes, we want to perform. That's part of the circle of learning, right? We want to have the art show. We want to have the accolades, but there's also the creative part and the process part where students learn by changing the trajectory of their project in midstream and wide.
With a shift from deficit to abundance, it's time to reimagine the very stage where learning takes center spotlight. Think about this. How can we redefine the notion of performance in education, shifting from standardized assessments or performance to embracing a more holistic approach, one that resonates with each student's unique talents and aspirations? Moreover, with funding traditionally tethered to performance metrics, we find ourselves at a crossroads where being seen and getting paid once dictated the narrative. But now, with newfound funding avenues, a new era approaches, a realm where possibilities for creative exploration and educational excellence are a reality.
Towards there is a space in the arts for you. If you want music on your own on your computer and make computer game songs, fantastic. There's a place for you. There's a place for you in the arts.
And that's the other thing too, is it's scary if you don't start until high school. So if I've been teaching high school for a really long time and I get kids who've never had art before, then I feel like I have to, backfill so much. So how could I have them curate their own show and they don't even have all the fundamentals yet? So how do I leverage their funds of knowledge and their assets to do that and accelerate their learning? And also with this new and we need more arts, let's start earlier. So we're starting to do things and address in elementary schools where the arts and early learning is really critical for so many reasons. And then we have capacity so we don't have to fear anymore that by the time he gets to be in high school, they don't have what it takes. And then how do we give them the space to fly? Because that's how the standards are progressing from the littlest ages beyond. So I appreciate you helping us direct on, you need to be following the standards and allowing kids freedom in their learning to make it student-centered.
And again, the standards aren't linear. They are, it's a giant circle and you can hit many standards in one lesson or a unit. It isn't beginning to end, and you can go in and out. And I know there's visual arts class out there, Studio One arts class. They have beginning, they have intermediate and advanced students, and then all in the same class, right? And the teacher's facilitating all three levels at once and differentiating.
There are various types of teachers. You have the sage teacher, you have the non-traditionalist teacher, you have the completely, it looks like chaos is happening in the classroom, right? We have a variety of teachers. And then at the same time, we have a variety of students, equally so, that want the traditionalists or don't want the traditional or are completely way out there and are 5 years ahead of even us. And recently I saw a new school in Texas where AI teaches academic content. And then for the rest of the day, the students are applying with intention real life skills in real ways, and the teacher is facilitator. They're taking care of the social emotional and connecting with the student on the human level of, so we're glad you learned 2 + 2, but now that you're building this IKEA shelf, tell me more about how you're applying that 2 + 2 here. Give me more feedback. What are you feeling? Are you frustrated because you have 10 nuts and bolts left from your IKEA shelf and you have a shelf built? Like it's fascinating to me to see how that job role is starting to shift. And our students, I feel like they've been screaming this at us for a long time of like, I can do it. I can do it. I can prove to you and show you that I can do it. Maybe not like you, but I can put on a show. I can put on a performance. I can teach you how I play, teach you how I act. And this is where I go to the curiosity of funding, where we've for a very long time felt like we haven't. I mean, you started, Jeannine, perfectly with in the 1970s. There was the great fraud that came in and depleted all of us, and we've been struggling since. And now, and Robin says this a lot too, what happens in abundance? What happens when you are successful? And I even wonder for our teachers when they do not just allow, but provide that access for students to take over and their success. What happens when we reach success, when we reach enough funding where we're not fighting anymore?
I love it. Love it. Yes. And I see a school where the arts is the community of the school. It is the culture of the school that brings kids together. Certain academics can be taught remotely or with other forms. And we also have different types of learners. So what does that look like for my Sophia would not do well with a remote program. She is a hands-on, in-person girl. Fantastic. Sophia's my daughter. And other kids, they got it. They want to go. They want to go to the STEAM lab. They want to build a rocket. So can we have a more flexible community school? I just want to call it community of learners, right? That would be the ultimate goal, right? And that we're not siloing into, well, oh, you're the arts, oh, we're the academics, oh, we're the sports, right? It's a holistic approach, and we're here to support the parents, and the parents are supporting us, and the kids are happy. They've been through so much, and they're so articulate with how they're feeling and through this pandemic and beyond. So yeah, that would be my hope and dream as we move forward, that students are able to pursue what they want to pursue in their school, and then are contributing members of society with a solid income. I want everybody to be housed and fed and, taken care of fundamentally, right? Yeah.
I love that. In SAUSD, we are creating spaces for students to be architects of their own learning, which does create that whole child, well-rounded education, and to discover themselves. We know the arts give them spaces to do that. And this has been a really beautiful conversation to surface how we have to still keep advocating, because our kids, our enrollment, kids are making decisions. Here's an interesting thing I heard recently. Kids are going after content, right? We're on social media and they're generating content. How are teachers providing the content that are keeping kids engaged and what they want to learn and who they want to be? So we have that same dream, create those spaces. And we thank you for shining the light on this conversation so that we can help to continue to transform our thinking to catch up with where our kids are. Because Sophia says this a lot too. Learning that is living. Kids were doing it all through the pandemic. They proved to us that they kept on learning without us. And they're gonna. They can go and they're all recording artists right now in high school and never have taken a class. So how are we going to make the classroom the space for them to be able to grow their wings to do those things with our facilitation?
Yes, and
that was great.
CreateCA's pivotal role in policy initiatives to the landmark passage of Prop 28. California's arts education future shines brighter than ever. As we pause, contemplating diverse advocacy campaigns, collaborations, and the need for holistic educational approaches, one resounding truth emerges. The transformative force of yes and, not just embracing creativity, but also in funding, urging us to think strategically, creatively, and collaboratively. Until next time, thank you for joining the conversation.